Hey guys, Dave here from Guitars Already Hero. If you're just starting out on your electric guitar journey or you're new to the world of guitar gear, you may be wondering whether to invest in a multi-effects pedal unit like this BOSS ME-90 or whether you should go with a traditional stomp box setup that I have to the side of me here. You might also be wondering what the hell does a multi-effects pedal even do? And in this video, I'll be telling you everything you need to know about multi-effects pedals using the new BOSS ME-90 here, which I think is a brilliant option for players of all levels who want a simple to use unit and they hate the complexity of digital screens and menu hopping. So I'll start with a quick explanation of multi-effects units, how they differ to regular stomp box setups, and then I'll run through the pros and cons of each option. I'll also quickly demo the ME-90 and show you a couple of my favorite features. So first off, what is a multi-effects pedal? Now, a multi-effects pedal is simply a guitar effects unit that combines multiple effects into a single device. Multi-effects pedals typically include your typical effects like distortion, overdrive, delay, reverb, modulation like chorus, flanger, and phaser, pitch shifting, and all sorts of other wacky sounds. These effects can be used individually or in combination to shape your guitar's tone and create different sounds. It's actually pretty important to understand what each of these general effect types do to your guitar tone, so be sure to watch my FX Pedals 101 video to get a great overview of all these effects individually. Now, most multi-effects pedals come with preset options where users can save and recall their preferred settings with ease. Additionally, multi-effects pedals often offer additional features like built-in amp modeling, loopers, and expression pedals for added control and flexibility. So now let's compare multi-effects units like the one I've got here to traditional pedal board setups like the one I've got to the side. I'll go over 7 main key factors to consider, which are cost, learning curve, tonal flexibility, customization and modularity, live gigging, live sound, and recording. So let's talk cost, which is often a significant consideration when building your guitar rig. First is upfront costs. If you're starting out with individual pedals here, your barrier to entry can be low. You can start off with something simple like a DS1 distortion pedal and upgrade over time. But if you want a full range of effects types at your disposal immediately, the costs can quickly add up. For example, if you total up all the individual pedals and additional equipment required to build out a pedal board like this, and shown in my FX 101 video, it can really add up. Having said that, you can make your pedal board as simple or as complicated as you want. But at the end of the day, if you want a lot of effects, it can get expensive. Now, with multi-effects pedals, the barrier to entry and upfront cost is a little bit higher. For example, this ME-90 is a few $100 US, and multi-effects can range anywhere from a couple of $100 to a couple of $1,000 depending on the brand and features. But you'll typically get a full suite of effects, all the essentials and extras like amp modeling. So not only are you getting effects, you're getting amps inside the unit, which cost thousands of dollars if you purchase them separately. These are, of course, emulations of the real thing. So we will still need a separate speaker system or something to plug into to hear the modeling, but they get pretty damn close to the real thing these days. So overall, you'll get more bang for your buck with a multi-effects unit. However, the barrier to entry is lower if you want to start off with a single pedal and upgrade over time. Okay, so now let's talk about learning curve. Traditional floor pedals are simple to understand. They typically have several physical knobs to adjust in order to shape your tone. Step on them to turn them on, step on them to turn them off. It's pretty simple. Because you're dealing with single pedals, you can also more easily understand what it is doing to your overall sound. Now, with multi-effects pedals, the general majority have menu screens and digital interfaces that you need to navigate and learn in order to create your effects chain. For a beginner or a technophobe, this can get confusing very quickly, especially if you don't already have a grasp of the basics of tone and standard floorboard setups. There are, of course, exceptions like the BOSS ME-90 here, which is one of the only few remaining multi-effects pedals, which has what you see is what you get physical knobs for each effect or amp block. So it more or less feels like you're just fiddling around with a standard floorboard setup. Next is tonal flexibility. And if you had a budget and you couldn't go over that, then in the short term, tonal flexibility of a standard floorboard setup will unfortunately be limited to what you can afford and the pedals at your disposal. As an example, let's say you purchase a distortion or overdrive pedal to provide some bite or grit to your tone. You are unfortunately limited to that one pedal until you can buy other distortion or overdrive pedals. Now, having said that, the options that you do have are endless. There's so many different overdrive pedals out there. and they each have their own unique flavor. But until you go out there and buy it and install it into your rig, you're quite limited. Now with a multi-effects unit, from the get-go, you typically have plenty of options to choose from in each category. For example, with this ME-90 unit, we are provided with multiple drive and distortion pedal options straight away. And let's say you wanted to add other effect pedals in front of the multi-effects unit in the future, then there's also the capacity to do that. If you want to head down that route, a combination of multi-effects and traditional effects, then you might want to ensure that your multi-effects pedal has an FX send and return for the best compatibility. So in summary, short-term flexibility of multi-effects is superior, but in terms of long-term flexibility, if the budget allows, then both can be similar. Let's talk about customization and modularity. When it comes to customization, I like to think of multi-effects pedals versus traditional pedals like Mac versus PC. With a traditional pedal setup, you can tweak and change things however you want, just like a PC build. However, if you don't know what you're doing, the result can be less than desirable. This especially comes into play when it comes to arranging pedal order and how you route your signal and how you power your pedals. Do it the wrong way and things can sound awful and not to their full potential. Now with multi-effects, everything works right out of the box and everything is integrated, kind of like a Mac. You don't need to fiddle around with patch cables, power supplies, or think too much about the effect order. It generally will just sound good and you won't need to buy any extras unless you want to. Now the problem with this though, is that if the unit breaks, well, it's pretty hard to repair as it's not very modular. Traditional pedal boards allow you to upgrade and swap out individual pedals as needed, while multi-effects pedals may require full replacement if it becomes outdated or malfunctioning. Next is the practical side of gigging. With a traditional floorboard, it's easy to change your parameters on your pedals during a show because what you see is what you get. However, when it comes time to toggle tones on during a song, you might need to toggle 3 pedals on or off at once. If you're good at Dance Dance Revolution, then this might be fine, but sometimes it can get pretty annoying. Now there are of course ways around this by using things like effects switches, but again, that's another additional cost, another piece of gear, and often costs at least a few $100s. Now with multi-effects, generally if you have a unit that has a menu system, then tweaking tones on the fly in a live setting can be a little bit tricky because you have to go into the menu and really know your unit back to front. Unless you have a unit here like the ME-90, which is big on physical controls. Now the benefits of multi-effects though is that you can save dozens of presets on your unit and you can toggle between them with a tap of a button. So really simple if you're playing a live covers gig and you need access to a wide range of tones really quickly, then multi-effects is a lot more flexible for that. Next is live sound. Now the amp that you use will be a big factor in how your tone sounds. And if you're able to take your amp with you wherever you play, this is fine. But if you're borrowing someone else's backline, you might get a tone that's a little bit different to the tone you're used to. And this is especially true with traditional pedals. Now, the multi-effects pedal, you often have amp modeling on board. So this way you can bypass any amp and go out of your multi-effects unit and straight into the DI of the venue. Now, in this scenario, your tone should sound exactly the way you intended it to. And I used to do this a lot when touring with my old band around Australia. Now there is of course nothing like the sound of a real amp live, so some people often prefer to have it the traditional way. Finally, let's talk recording. With a standard pedal rig, if you want to record, you're generally going to have to run it into an amp and then use a microphone to capture everything. Unless you're a pro and you have all the equipment and everything, it can get expensive and cumbersome. Now, on the other hand, these days, almost all multi-effects units function as an audio interface, so you can record directly into your computer from the unit. And this is wonderful for those looking into songwriting and recording. And everything you heard in this video from the ME-90 was recorded directly into the computer. So it might seem like multi-effects pedals are the clear winner, and in most cases, I would say so. However, when you develop as a guitarist and you learn more about what you personally like and you develop your own playing style and sound, I think traditional pedals start becoming a better option. On top of that, there's also something really fun about building your own pedal rig, so much so that it's become a really die-hard hobby within itself. Some people like buying a stock standard car and others like modifying theirs and tweaking it to their liking. It's just personal preference, but both options can get you from A to B. So now that we've gone through all the pros and cons, let's take a look at what I consider to be an awesome option for players of all levels looking for a great multi-effects pedal that can serve them for years to come. And that's the BOSS ME-90 here. And it features, what you see is what you get, tactile knobs for each effect block, making it super simple to dial in your tone and to understand actually what each effect is doing to your sound. So a lot of the negatives of most digital multi-effects are mitigated with this unit. Now there's two main modes on the ME-90, manual mode and memory mode. When you're in manual mode, the unit will function like a standard stomp box rig. So each of these 7 buttons will now correspond to the 7 blocks up here. So we have amp, EQ, reverb, compression, overdrive, modulation, and delay. And within each of those blocks are dozens of variations and effect types. Now the ME-90 uses the same AIRD amp processing that you'll find in their high-end units like the BOSS GT1000. On the left are a whole bunch of great BOSS created amps, and on the right, a few recreations of iconic amps like Twin Reverb, Tweed, AC30, Marshall 1959, and a Mesa dual rectifier. You can also dig in and find extra amps within the Tone Studio. I'll talk about that later. So let's hear how these amps sound just by themselves without any effects. Now let's say you're using your own amp. You can simply turn off the amp modeling and use the standalone effects. But let's keep our amp on for the sake of this demo. Again, in manual mode, the unit works very simply. So if I want some drive, I'll toggle that on. Add some reverb. And let's add a touch of delay. As mentioned before, the physical controls provide an easy way of tweaking your effect parameters. What you see is what you get. So let's try a different type of overdrive pedal and play around with a different delay. So there you go, super intuitive and easy to use. Now, if you're happy with your tone, you can save it to a memory preset, and that takes us to memory mode. Now tap this button to get into memory mode, and you can toggle between all your saved tones, which are arranged in banks. In each bank, you'll have 4 presets. Toggle between different banks with these 2 buttons, and then select one of the 4 presets in the bank using the bottom row of buttons. Now with the CTL button, you can toggle on or off multiple effects at once, providing you with 2 completely different variations within the one preset. So when I tap the CTL button here, you'll see multiple effects changing at once within this one patch. Finally, the expression pedal will act as a default volume pedal, but when you apply pressure, it will engage the pedal FX, and there's some great options to choose from, like wah or pitch shifting that you heard at the start of this video. So that's all there really is to the ME-90. It's really simple to use, but has a lot of great flexibility in tones. Now, here are some of my favorite features of the ME-90. Now, number one is the addition of a Klon Centaur clone to the overdrive/distortion block. This pedal retails for up to $10,000 which is absolutely crazy. Now, the version on the ME-90 isn't the real thing, but it's close enough for me, especially if I'm saving $10,000. The next cool feature I like is the drop tune feature within the comp block. I absolutely hate detuning my guitar for certain songs. It can be a pain in the ass, but let's say you need to play something that's traditionally in D standard, 2 semitones down. Well, we can use this pedal and then voila, no detuning required. It's not 100% perfect, but it can get you really close. And I would personally just stick to half a step or a whole tone down. Any further and it starts sounding a little bit digital. The next feature I really like is the freeze feature on the pedal effects. So if you play a note or a chord and then push the pedal down, it will freeze that. And this is a cool way to add a textural layer, or for me, I like using it to practice my modes. This way you can really hear the flavor of each mode with the root in the background. So let's take a listen to A Ionian and A Dorian. Another feature I like is the phrase loop, which is a basic onboard looper. This is wonderful for jamming and improvising cool ideas. It's not going to be as functional as a dedicated looper, but it is great at a basic level. So it'll let you record a loop and it'll let you overdub as well. But it doesn't feature any undo features or anything like that. And finally, the last thing I really like about the ME-90 is all the hidden features, which are really cool. So if you plug the ME-90 into your computer and go to the Boss Tone Studio, if you go to the last option of each effect or amp block, there'll actually be a whole bunch of other options, other effects or amps that you can access in this last option. And you can save that to each patch individually as well. So there is more to the ME-90 than what is written on the actual unit. There's plenty of other cool features to explore on the ME-90, but I'll just leave it at that for now. So I hope you enjoyed this video about multi-effects units. If you haven't seen my FX Pedals 101 video, then be sure to check that out. It's especially useful if you're a beginner and you don't know what any of these effects actually do or sound like. If you have any questions, then please let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time on Guitar Zero to Hero. Cheers.